Today's episode is sponsored by Paper and Spark. Paper and Spark is the go-to financial resource center for makers and artists. Download their popular bookkeeping templates that import your sales from Etsy, Amazon, Shopify, and other e-commerce platforms, all designed for makers by a CPA and handmade seller. Thank you so much, Paper and Spark. And now, here's the show. Welcome to episode 199 of the Craft Industry Alliance podcast. I'm Abby Glassenberg. Craft Industry Alliance is a community for craft professionals where you can strengthen your creative business, stay up to date on industry news, and build connections within our supportive trade association. Check it out at craftindustryalliance.org. Today on the show, we're talking about building a values-based business with my guests, Meg and Patrick McElwee. Meg started sewing after finishing an undergraduate degree in philosophy and a graduate degree in education. While living and teaching in rural Mexico for 3 years, she studied pattern drafting and made her own clothes, first out of necessity and then because of the sense of empowerment and joy it brought to her life. The meditative act of stitching continues to bring her a deep sense of well-being. Her passion for slow fashion has expanded over the years to include Sew Liberated's pattern line, 2 books, a sewing course with Craftsy, and her own online course, The Mindful Wardrobe Project. She enjoys supporting the slow stitching community through her blog and her popular Instagram account, as well as live classes from time to time. Meg, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Abby.
And Patrick has been Meg's best friend and partner since they met in French class at age 19. A historian, computer programmer, and breakdancer, Patrick manages the technical and business side of Sew Liberated and is often the one behind the camera. Meg and Patrick have 3 kids, 3 cats, a dog, and the incredible luck to be able to work creatively together every day. Patrick, let's welcome you.
Thank you so much. I've learned so much from this podcast, so I'm really thrilled to be on here.
Oh, good. That's great to hear. And Meg, I discovered something that I didn't know about you when I was doing my research for this episode, which is that, like me, you also did Teach for America.
I did, yes. I was teaching 5th grade in the Bronx.
So I don't know about you, but those were some of the, I would describe them as most challenging years of my life. I don't know how you felt about that time.
Same here. Yes, same here. Actually, that kind of spun me off in the direction of Montessori education, and I eventually pursued that route. But it was a very eye-opening and engaging experience for sure.
Yeah, and intense. It's very intense.
Where were you, Abby?
I was in the Mississippi Delta.
Okay.
So completely opposite of the Bronx, but still a very eye-opening and very intense 2 years. And so it sounds like after that, and you two met, as we said in the intro, when you were 19. So, or is that right? You both met at 19?
That's right.
That's right.
Okay, so where was this French class? In high school?
we were in college, Abby. We were both in an intensive French class. So I met 5 days a week, and we both were planning to go and do some backpacking around France and around Europe. And so we ended up doing that the very next year and doing it together.
Okay. Got it. All right. So you've been together for a long time, and so after New York, you spent some time in DC.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and that was kind of following Patrick's career path there. He was working on immigration issues on the Hill, and had a very busy life there. This is kind of a pattern that we've gone through several times, right? Where we do something that I'm interested in, and then we kind of swing back and follow your passion, then we swing back and follow my passion. We just kind of like go back and forth, toggle back and forth in these sort of supportive roles.
Yeah, because after you mentioned Teach for America, and so Meg was doing that in New York, and I kept commuting back and forth. So almost every weekend I was getting on the Chinatown bus and visiting Meg. And
oh wow,
because she was really it was very difficult. She was struggling with that, and so when she finished Teach for America, she moved to where I was in D.C. and I was doing all kinds of like political advocacy stuff around economic issues, Social Security, and immigration. But then Meg was doing her graduate training in Montessori, and she really had a very strong idea of that she wanted to move to Mexico. And she found a little one-room Montessori school in Mexico, and we totally left everything we were doing in D.C. And went down there.
We just figured, when are we going to have the opportunity to do this again?
That is smart.
Because we got married. We were like 23 when we got married.
Okay.
So, and we weren't going to have any kids for a little while. So we thought, well, you know what? It's time to do something like this now.
My grandfather's family is from Mexico, and where I did not grow up speaking Spanish, but Spanish was my mother's first language. But she forgot it in her young years. And so I had this really sort of strong desire to reconnect with that part of my family and that heritage of mine. And so, we just put it together with my graduate degree in Montessori and found a little one-room schoolhouse. And
how did you find it? Like, I'm just trying to think, like, back, this is like early 2000s or something like that. Like, how did you like...
5.
We were not very sophisticated.
Okay.
I will say.
But the internet was
there.
A nascent thing, and the International Montessori Association had a web page where they listed jobs all around the world, and this is where I found it.
Got it. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So you were in Mexico for 3 years, and tell us a little bit about kind of your lifestyle there and what life was like for the two of you during that period.
I mean, I think that Mexico, and we still think of Mexico as really our anchoring, like what anchored us as adults and kind of established our ideals, right, as adults. And we had a very sort of, I guess, relaxed life there because I was teaching from 9 to 1. I'd probably come home at about 2. And it was a small town. So we had a lot of free time. We had a lot of friends. The pace of life was just gloriously slow. And we just had a lot of great conversations going on.
And it was very cold. I think people probably think of Mexico, and most people, true, at least in the United States, who've gone to Mexico have gone understandably somewhere, where the weather is very pleasant, where there's a beach and so on. But we were up in the mountains, in a place that's also very beautiful, Copper Canyon. But it was so cold all the time, and we really struggled even just to keep our house warm. But that, I think, something about the difficulty of that environment created a real sense of community. So you'd come together in people's houses, and it was sort of like this warm place. People would come over with unannounced, without calling ahead of time, and expect to sit down and have coffee for a few hours. And that was pretty wonderful, like that kind of easy community.
Yeah. And so it was there, Meg, that you started your first blog.
Right. Yeah. It was called Beans and Rice, actually, the very first one. And that was really just intended to keep our family back in the United States kind of abreast of what was going on in our lives. And then it kind of morphed into what was called Montessori by Hand, because what I found very early on in my Montessori training was that one of the things I loved the most about it was the idea that you are creating a beautiful, supportive environment for these young children that sort of mimicked what they might find in a warm and welcoming home. So lots of natural materials, lots of homemade materials. I made so many classroom materials while I was in Mexico and also in my training. And it was then that I started picking back up with sewing again, because I'd learned how to sew as a kid from my mother taught me. And it just kind of opened opened my eyes to the creative possibilities of classroom design materials, educational material design. And I started taking pictures and blogging about that process, offering little templates so other people could make what I had designed. And eventually I just started figuring out how to design my own clothes as well. I had plenty of time.
I was thinking one of the first things that we did when you were trying to build a little audience for that blog was we printed off some business cards and you went to a Montessori craft fair or craft trade fair of some kind.
Fair, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you had lots of time to blog and create these DIYs and create materials for your classroom and for your students to use while they were with you. And then maybe sort of less shopping options, or did you just want to
no
make
shopping?
No shopping options. Okay. All right. And so if you're in a new place for 3 years,
let me just paint the picture of this little town of ours. So you would fly in, or say if you're driving from El Paso, Texas, it would be about a 10-hour drive. You would fly in to the city of Chihuahua, and the city is not a very big city, but it's this kind of Wild West feeling city, and a lot of cowboy boots and cowboy hats, and then you would drive along these mountain roads, and it's really alpine desert. And the little town we were living in, at the time, what was the population?
Maybe, it's about 2,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
So very small, and really sort of the gateway to the indigenous Tarahumara communities that were peppered all throughout the Sierra. I always was greatly impacted by going hiking or backpacking out there, because here when you go, the trails are very clearly marked. There are clear signs as to where you can go, where you can't go, where you can camp, where you can't camp. It's the sense of sort of protected land with no people on it. And that's not the case there. There, you can be sure they used to say, someone's always watching you, because everyone lives in these hills in the wilderness there, in the Sierra Madres, and so the town itself was tiny. It had maybe 2 grocery stores, and the offerings there were pretty slim. And yeah, we would occasionally drive back into the big city of Chihuahua to, where we're vegetarians, so we would stock up on like tofu and stuff like that. But but really,
wine.
We ate beans and rice all the time. So it was a very small town, and that's why I started sewing my own clothes.
Right. Okay. And so, did the process of sewing your clothes make it onto the blog? Like, was there a connection there? I mean, how quickly did that take place?
I think there was, if I recall. I feel like I entered some sort of contest that Simplicity had going on.
Okay.
I don't know, and I got something anyway. It's been such a long time now. But yeah, I had a few big 4 patterns, but I just pretty quickly started figuring out how to do it myself.
Okay.
And yeah, it just kind of went from there. I've always been self-taught and always just enjoyed the process of getting into a creative flow. That place where I really learned about this as a Montessori teacher, where we're trying to, with the students, we're really trying to match the child with the type of project that's going to be just hard enough, but not too hard and not too easy. You want to have that place where just, they feel like they can do it, and they have to really engage to kind of to get there, right? And I feel that same sort of that range of interest, right? Where there are things that I enjoy doing that are easy for me. I'll say, knitting something simple, or embroidery, or even mending, things that are a little more what I'd call meditative in their handwork. And then there are those things like making a pattern, or figuring out, now for us, figuring out how to design a course syllabus, how to take our customers on a journey that will provide them with this sense of accomplishment and success. So there are these challenges that are more in that flow range, where I just kind of delve deep. And yeah, I was fortunate enough to have a lot of time in that state when I was in Mexico, and that was kind of the beginning of Sew Liberated. Mm-hmm. And as you're a mother, Abby, that kind of concentrated creative flow is a little harder to access when your children are a certain age. So there have been real ebbs and flows in my creative engagement with Sew Liberated, but it's been a very very forgiving project to work on all these years. Yeah.
I want to talk about all of those things because there have been ebbs and flows, which are really interesting. And I like that idea of it being forgiving. And I think that rings true for me as well. So, okay. So after these 3 years were over, where did you go next? What happened after that?
Well, so one thing I wanted to mention about those 3 years was that the patterns also came out of some necessity, because we had a small amount of savings in the bank when we went down there. And Meg was earning a salary, and I ended up earning a small salary when I was down there working with this clinic. But we were just earning enough to sort of get by month to month. And so every now and then Meg would go and get some fancier fabric that she would have, maybe she would get it when she was on a trip back to visit her parents in the States or something. And that small amount of money we had in the bank would get even smaller. And so I started to say, well, maybe there's a way that you could package up some of these things that you're making into a pattern. And so the first pattern we released was a PDF pattern. I believe it was the reading pillow. Is that the first pattern?
Was it that, or was it the little apron for the Montessori kids?
Oh, it may have been that.
Yeah.
But the very first pattern we released was just a little PDF pattern, and it was well received by your blog audience, and that was really what got things started.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting that the first thing you released was a digital file.
It's so interesting because later as soon as we could, we stopped selling digital files and we started selling only paper patterns, because we thought that was the right way to do it. We thought the PDF was just a little bit of a Band-Aid to get us, because we couldn't do paper.
Also, we were in Mexico. We weren't in the United States. We couldn't take physical patterns.
Well, we started selling them. Your dad used to go down to the post office and put stamps on the envelopes as he was shipping them out to all your customers.
Okay.
So he helped make it happen.
Yeah, totally. Okay. All right. So the pattern business, the sort of genesis of it really was in Mexico, as was the blog audience building. So I think it's really interesting to think about how that time period kind of grounded everything that came next. So did you move back to the U.S.? Did you move to North Carolina where you are now?
Yeah, so here's where it's one of these transition points where I applied for grad school. I got into Duke in a PhD program in history, and that's what drove our move here in North Carolina. And as I was doing that, Meg put in her first book proposal with Interweave. They ended up publishing her first book, which was entitled Sew Liberated, and it was actually in the process of writing that book proposal that we brainstormed the name Sew Liberated, and we liked it enough that we ended up changing from Montessori by Hand to Sew Liberated.
Okay, yeah. What did you like about that name? I mean, it seems to sort of perfectly encapsulate the brand, but it's hard to have known that back then.
Well, we kind of chuckle right now because about every third sewing business has SEW.
It does.
And the play on SO in the name, and it's just very cute.
In my family, we're always like, we should start a blog called So Annoying.
In our defense, we didn't realize it at the time. And I'm sure that's
nobody else
realizes that either.
Yeah, totally.
But I'll let Patrick speak to this because the liberated part of it is actually speaks to more of our more radical political.
Well, I always had a vision that we might make some kind of a shirt or something, or some kind of a graphic that would have the chains of all the logos of sort of the big box stores, the fast fashion stores, and somebody breaking free.
Oh, okay.
That was one of the images that I think was in our heads when we first came up with the word liberated.
Right.
Just the idea that you feel liberated in the act of making. The act of making itself is so connected to human liberation.
I want to take a minute now to talk about our sponsor, Paper and Spark. Paper and Spark bookkeeping templates are more than just a spreadsheet. You're really getting a set of resources and support to help you understand your business finances with confidence and clarity. Every Paper and Spark spreadsheet comes with step-by-step videos and written instructions, so you can not just see how to use the spreadsheet, but also you can really understand what the numbers mean. Every purchase is a one-time fee, so no subscriptions here. And that includes lifetime access to any updates to the spreadsheet, access to the private Paper and Spark support group, which is called the Accounting Accountability Club. I love that. Live monthly office hours and bookkeeping checklists delivered straight to your inbox on the first of each month. All Paper and Spark products are designed by a CPA who is also a handmade seller experienced in e-commerce. So Janet, who is the founder of Paper and Spark, she totally gets it. Her spreadsheets allow you to quickly import your sales, transactions, and fees with one easy copy and paste each month from Etsy, from eBay, Amazon, Shopify, Square, Squarespace, and PayPal. You can keep track of whether your shop is making a profit each month. You can log your business expenses so you're ready for tax time. You can nail your cost of goods and set profitable price points for every single product you make, and figure out your inventory numbers for year end, all with Paper and Spark. That is so powerful. And great news, we have a coupon code to share just with listeners of the Craft Industry Alliance podcast. And that code is CIAPOD10. That's the number 10, 10. And if you use that code, you will save 10% off of your entire purchase from Paper and Spark. That is a super good deal. So that code again is CIAPOD10, and you can use it for 10% off your entire purchase. So go check out Paper and Spark and get a handle on your bookkeeping and your finances once and for all. Thank you so much, Paper and Spark. And now back to my conversation with Meg and Patrick. So you changed the name of the blog, and Meg got the book deal. And really the books, both of them, Sew Liberated and Growing Up Sew Liberated, which I have here on my bookshelf, are really kids focused. They're about really almost like raising kids in this Montessori sort of, approach, I think, in a way.
Especially the second book. And I love how both of them sort of, they're almost a bridge to what I'm doing now, which is less Montessori. Actually, our children are in Montessori school, but it was this sort of this transition period for us, and it was a great one. It seemed to flow pretty well. I mean, my early blog readership was also I kind of chuckled to myself because I was reading mom blogs way before I was a mom. Just because I had this interest in educational philosophy. And Amanda Soul was blogging.
Yes.
And she was a big influence on me.
Me too. Reading her blog changed how I parented completely. Yeah.
Yes. And she sort of introduced me. She sort of helped widen, I guess, my pre-parenting perspective of what parenting could look like as well, because I had been sort of Montessori focused, and she sort of opened my eyes to what would homeschooling look like, what would unschooling look like, what does Waldorf look like, all these different things, and we ended up exploring all of those things with our children over the years. But yeah, she was she was instrumental in helping us sort of find this book deal because she passed along my info to her agent.
Oh.
And it was her agent who really helped kind of set this in motion.
That's so great. I love that early blog community was just such a nice web of people.
Really, really was.
Yeah. Kind of prior to social media. It was like before. Okay. So you wrote these 2 books and then you had children of your own and actually became a parent.
That's right.
Yeah, that's right. And I would say in these years, Sew Liberated was something that Meg was working on in between all those intensive parenting tasks that we had. And we kind of had a 50-50 working relationship because I was in grad school. I had some flexibility. And so, I would say maybe Meg was spending about 50% time on Sew Liberated, but it was kind of ticking along in the background. We weren't trying to push it or grow. It was just kind of there for a lot of years, really, or for those 4 years, really. The 4 years I was in grad school.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, and so you have 2 sons, you actually have 3 children. Are they all boys?
No, we have 2 sons and a daughter.
And a daughter. Okay, all right, great. And then your middle son had some serious health issues early on.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. So at about 20 weeks into the pregnancy with our second son, he was diagnosed with hypoplastic left heart syndrome, which basically means that almost half of the heart didn't grow when he was a fetus. That's the left ventricle. And so he went through a series of heart surgeries, one when he was 2 days old, one at 6 months, and one at 3 years. And it was very difficult during that period of time, but he has thrived. It's really amazing what the cardiologists and the surgeons at Duke were able to do.
Yeah.
So he's 10 years old now and doing fantastic. Most people have no idea.
He was playing tennis yesterday. Yes, has regular tennis games he plays. But we still live in a bit of it's just a question mark as far as, when is he going to need his next intervention? He doesn't have a regular circulatory system. It's pretty awesome what he has, but he certainly has been dependent on surgical technology and he will be again at some point. We don't exactly know when, but we're just really, really, really grateful to have him be so healthy. We did not anticipate that we'd have him have so many, great years. And so that is also sort of a foundational, it's why we run our business the way we do, because we really want to have the time right now with him, with our children, and fortunately, I mean, we haven't. So I guess you can understand through these chats that we don't like have a really big drive to grow Sew Liberated. We just kind of want it to sort of sustain our way of living and kind of allow us certain time freedoms to be with our family.
And there was a period there in around 2015 when things were really, I don't know if the word bleak is right to say, but like Sew Liberated, I actually remember, and I can't put my finger exactly on where I was, but I feel like you had an employee who was like managing Sew Liberated.
Yes.
And I feel like I met her somewhere. And I was like, oh, is this business changing hands? Like, what's happening here?
Yeah. So that was Danica. And Danica really got us through those years because Danica came on board probably a little bit before we got the diagnosis with Lachlan. And she was a recent graduate from school here in Raleigh where she'd studied fashion. And really, I'd say when we got the diagnosis, at that point, we were trying to make Sew Liberated be the thing that was going to liberate me from grad school, because it was increasingly apparent that job market for history PhDs wasn't all that great.
Right. It wasn't conducive to stay because we knew we needed to stay close to Duke.
Right.
So we weren't ready to embrace the kind of mobility it would have required to try to get a tenure track job somewhere.
Sure.
And so we were trying to get out. So we were trying to make Sew Liberated a thing. And, business can be tricky in the sense that if you're not hitting the right market, you can be pouring your sweat and tears into it, but maybe not increasing how much money the business is actually bringing in. And that was kind of the situation for us in those years. So what ended up happening is that I took a skill that I had learned as part of Sew Liberated, which was working on our website, and I turned it into a new career in computer programming. And so after Sew Liberated was sort of running out of steam, I would say at that point. So I ended up getting a full-time job for about 8 years,
right.
8 or 9 years.
I didn't have any extra at all.
I imagine.
I'm surprised that I was able to get food on the table for my two boys at the time. Just lunch was a victory,
Yeah.
And so, it was a really hard time because I think both of us, to a certain extent, like we were running on fumes, both in between the second and the third surgery and after the third surgery. You have this like rush of adrenaline. And our son had a really hard recovery after his third surgery. And, Patrick was sleeping in the hospital with him. They didn't have a bed for parents. He was like sleeping on that twin bed.
Yeah.
And it was just the Sew Liberated. I just wasn't thinking about it at all.
Yeah.
And that was really the case for a good, 2 or 3 years. Even.
Right. And so we actually thought that it was the computer programming that was going to be sort of the way that our family was survive. And it's actually a good job and a good job market. We were pretty happy. And we decided that we were going to go back to those PDF patterns and finally digitize the patterns again. And
to
just
kind of
simplify.
Put it on us. We were like, well, we have some of these designs. Let's digitize them. And
right. Because you were selling, the business was selling a suite of print patterns for like garments.
Right. We did not have any PDF patterns.
And you were selling them direct to consumer. That's the way that
both.
Yes.
We were selling them wholesale
and direct.
You say pretty early on, we did have we had relationships with distributors, and there were stores were carrying our patterns, and yes, we were also shipping them ourselves
directly out. Okay, and so you decided, Patrick had gone back to work, and you decided, okay, well maybe we should take these paper patterns and make them into digital files that we can sell instead.
That's right.
Okay. And so, which is funny because we had talked about early on, there was a digital pattern and then you felt like you needed to go to print. So now you're going back to digital.
And people had asked us every now and then if we had digital versions, and we sort of knew in the back of our heads we ought to have that as an option, but we just had never got around to sort of actually figuring out how to do it.
And so how did that change things for you once you had them available digitally?
Well, I would say it became transformative, but it really only became transformative when combined with Meg's increased outpouring of creativity. And I think there was something about that time period. Things stabilized for our son medically. I had the regular income of a job, and Meg found Instagram at that point, and Instagram was something that I think really connected for you.
Yes, it was like, I didn't have the bandwidth to blog. I still had 3 very young children, and Instagram, it looked like a mini blog to me. So I said, hey, I love writing. I've always really enjoyed it. And I enjoy photography. So I thought, well, I'll just give this a go. But it was more than that. It was that I started to make clothes for my children. I had not done anything for years.
Right.
I had been knitting here and there, but really I just didn't have, I didn't have anything going on creatively in my life. It was just the surviving. And so, and I came back into this world, and it had changed quite a bit, right? It had morphed from blog world to Instagram world. And it was there were new new people, new designers. People were making in a different way. Because of Instagram, there was a lot of sharing of the items that people had made, and it was very much. It seemed to me like people just wanted to make and make and make and make and make, and everything was very, very, very busy. And I wanted to get back into it, but I was like, I just have to do this at my own speed. And for me, it's not to have a to make list that's, 20, 30, 40 items long. It's the act of making one thing and the intention that I put behind it, and the way that it sort of transports me into this creative flow. I don't do it to make a product, a thing. I do it for the process itself. And that's really where I found this connection, and I started writing about it. And I mean, now they're all over Instagram. You can find, sewing is self-care, mindful making, that kind of thing. But it really wasn't around when I started to talk about it. And I just kind of poured my thoughts into that, this idea of meditative creative work, and kind of, I found my philosophical home there, and my creative home as well. And that's kind of how it started. I did not really intend for it to grow, because like I said, I was homeschooling our kids at that point, and this was my creative side project. So,
but rather than just a long tail, those digital patterns, the sales actually started to grow. And Meg, you actually started to release new sewing patterns for the hinterland dress and the metamorphic dress, and all the rest.
Okay, right. And then the print patterns still existed, but they were just for distributors and just for the shops.
Yeah. So one of the logistical issues we ran into was that we moved to a very small house downtown, and we had no place to warehouse these printed patterns. So we were talking to my friend Ray, of Made by Ray, about how she handles, the printed aspect of it. We were able to make a few little shifts, and ultimately Palmer Printing took up the task of printing and assembling and warehousing and shipping our printed patterns to our wholesale customers and distributers.
Right.
And that was a big logistical weight off of our shoulders, because you can imagine having this business, and if you have 2 spare hours between the little kids, it's kind of a downer to have to just go and ship things.
Well, I think I watched the entire series of The Wire. If anyone remembers The Wire, if you're old enough, packing patterns, because I would just be packing patterns for hours and hours, and we got rid of that logistics, where we were no longer handling it.
Right. And it's great that Palmer really offers that whole suite. So they'll print the patterns, they'll fold them, put them in the bags, and then warehouse them. And then when an order comes in, they'll pick it and pack it for you and send it out. You're paying them for the service, but I feel like for a certain kind of business at a certain kind of scale, it really is worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It really is. Mm-hmm. And especially if you're like us, and we had some serious space and time constraints. So.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say that when it comes to Instagram and coming back to the sewing world after this break that you had when you had been focused on family, I think there's some people who would, take a look around and be like, oh gosh, everything's changed. Everything, as you said, is moving really fast in these little snippets. And I don't want to get back in. I don't, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's not what I'm familiar with. And so it would be scare people away. But it sounds like you were able to take a look and then figure out a way back in on your own terms. Yeah. And I guess that maybe that's a skill that Patrick and I both sort of have honed over the years. We kind of get a bit of a kick of jumping into an unknown and figuring it out.
from Mexico to, to our other, little life experiences. But yes, I have a different feling about Instagram right now, which I could go into if you want. But.
Yeah, no, I'd love to hear how it's changed for you, because as you said, you connected with an audience there, and you have as of this morning, 106,000 followers on Instagram, which is incredible. But the app has changed a lot, and I think it's going to continue to change this year, it sounds like. And I think all of our relationships with it has changed too. So yeah, tell us a little bit about the way you were approaching it then versus now.
Right. So back then it was still chronological. So I was following my fiber friends, I call them, and I would see them, when they posted, and I thought it was great. I really enjoyed the use of the hashtags, both as a pattern designer and as someone who enjoys making other people's designs as well. I just love that the hashtag allows people to see a design on all different kinds of bodies. I think that is such an asset. It's something that's hard to provide even just on a website, even with diverse models, just to see all sorts of variations, and also people's creative variations with it, right? If they're making it in different fabrics, if they are making little pattern hacks, it's all just really, it was so fun to have that. And now my relationship with Instagram is sort of shifted a bit, in part because I sense that it's not a creative space that I, as a creative person, I don't own my space there. Not in a sense of, in that, yes, I have my mailing list or whatever, but just that, what if I don't want to do reels? What if that's not my creative thing? I could jump in and say, I'm going to figure this out. I don't know. I'm sort of feeling like they're just, the way certain things are working now, everything's looking it's looking the same to me. Like if I scroll through, and it's also feeling overwhelming to me at this point in my life. And it may be different for other people, but at this point in my life, what I feel like I need creatively is to put my phone down and pick up whatever project I'm working on. You can get to the point where you have this sort of inspiration saturation. And that's sort of what I was feeling. I just needed some space to come up with my own ideas outside of that deluge of, Instagram posts and reels and videos and whatnot. And I do think, and you may have written about this, Abby, that Instagram is, anyway, whatever plans they have.
Yeah, it's gonna.
It seems like they have plans.
It's gonna be kind of video first. It sounds like as time goes by. That's basically what they're saying.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just it's a reminder, I think, that just like with MySpace back in the day or anything, like these aren't sort of the commons. We don't all control these social media. They have their own interests, and they're sort of now, I think, more aggressively trying to manipulate all of us into behaving the ways that help them
make money.
Meet their goals. And it's not necessarily ours. And it's not to say it's all bad. Like Meg said, the discoverability is amazing with hashtags. We never had that when we were trying to do that with Flickr back in the day, for example.
Right.
So it's not like we're going to be abandoning Instagram or anything. But I think it's for us, it's a reminder that what we want to do is just remember what our goals are and just keep working towards our goals, and not necessarily even worry about what Instagram is going to do, interface with that as much as we can. But also remember that our email list is a list of people who want to hear from us.
And actually, Abby, I took your course.
On
the email newsletter course.
Yeah.
And it just really opened my eyes as that. And both Patrick and I really enjoy your newsletter. And how we're sort of we see that as more of a way to connect. And for me, I'm switching back to a longer format now that the kids are a little older, the biggest noisemaker in our family might just be the puppy, but you know, our youngest is 7, so we're out of the toddler phase, I feel more drawn to longer form writing and more thought pieces as opposed to just the little snippet that you get to write on Instagram. So kind of how we're interfacing with it is that I'm writing blog posts, and those blog posts will get put onto Instagram, but you know that they are the bulk of the content of our newsletter as well, and that feels right to me right now for my own creative practice. So we'll see how that goes, and I'm just curious. I'm curious to see how it all evolves. And thus far, we've had really positive feedback from folks who are feeling the same way about, you know, maybe perhaps the Instagram scrolling is not really helping their creative path, and hopefully it will allow people to kind of tie back into why they really love making and the feeling they get from actually working towards a goal and getting there.
I'm so glad blogging is still here and is maybe coming back. It makes me happy. So, yeah. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit about the Mindful Wardrobe Project. So you have these patterns, and, you know, as we said, it's an ever-growing library of both digital and paper sewing patterns. And they're, you know, maybe $15 or something like that. And then you launched this course, and it's $295, clearly a much deeper dive, a longer period of time, a much more engaged experience with you, Meg. And so I wondered if you could talk about sort of why you wanted to make it, and like how it serves your audience.
So yeah, the course itself is a place where, you know, people who are interested, who have been sewing and or perhaps even are just sewing interested, are able to come and sort of be in community. It's a smaller group of people who go through each sort of 6-7 week module with us, and we go through a process of planning your wardrobe. But it's more than that. It's really figuring out what is it that lights your fire? It's the idea of getting dressed in the morning as a creative act as well. So it's not you come out of it at the end with a closet that fits your lifestyle and your style and your personal needs. And we work with the clothes that are already in your closet. If they're ready to wear, if they're thrifted, we encourage a lot of thrifting as well. And at the end of the course, you come out of it with this plan, but you also, and this is my favorite part of the course, you get a year's worth of personal contact with Judith, who is our rock star fitting wizard, and she helps you. So say you are having an issue with a fit. It could be one of our patterns. It could be any pattern you're working on. You upload photos or do a little video chat. Judith responds with a little video or a little tutorial, and she helps you figure out what to do to get what kind of adjustments you need to make. She teaches you how to make those adjustments. So it takes sewing kind of out of the realm of, I'm just going to pick this style because I like it, and then you make it, and what if it doesn't fit quite right? Well, then things that don't fit quite right, you are not going to love. And my thing is that clothes that you love, they last. And if we're looking at it from an ecological, you know, perspective, the really important thing is to have clothes in your closet that just light you up, and that you're not pulling on, you know, you don't feel uncomfortable in them, right? They just fit you like a glove. And so so we help you through the fitting community, the Mindful Wardrobe Project, to answer your most pressing fitting issues and to kind of move you forward on that path of liberation, of being able to look at a pattern and say, you know what, I'm going to need to make a forward shoulder adjustment. I'm going to look back in my notes at what Judah showed me, and I can do that, right? Or a full bust adjustment, or a round belly adjustment. All these different, whatever your needs are. We can help you sort of get over that. What I think is the biggest roadblock, what can be the biggest creative roadblock for people when sewing garments, is how to get them to fit well.
And I loved the video that you used to kind of launch it and share the idea behind it. And I don't know, was that professionally shot, or how did you create this video? Because it's so lovely.
Oh, well, thank you so much. So there's a local videographer called Big Dog Little Bed who we used for that video. And also we have sort of a Sew Liberated video that you'd see if you were on our homepage. And they do really lovely stuff. And basically, I think one of the strengths of that video is the script. So we spent a lot of time, thinking about our messages and writing and rewriting and editing. And the one great thing about our relationship is that Meg and I have a really strong relationship, and we can sort of edit each other pretty strongly, I think. And so, we got to a script that we thought really encapsulated what the course was about. And Meg just kind of read that in the camera, and Big Dog Little Bed came out and really added some fantastic B-roll. And also we had some wonderful people, giving their testimonials about it and that kind of thing. Right.
And you are learning a lot more about videography now, one of Patrick's little creative side projects.
Yeah, it's when we got started back in 2006, 2007, I would say being really good at photography was a lot, and that really made you shine out on the blog. And
yeah.
One thing that we really, realized, like the folks behind Instagram, is that video has taken over the internet. And so we want to be getting better at video ourselves. And we're trying to get to the point where it's easy for us to hit record and come out with a product that looks like something we feel, good putting out into the world. And so that's kind of our current project, right?
Video can be a huge learning curve. And like I said, I don't really resonate with the real quick sort of reels and that kind of feel, but I do resonate more with the storytelling, the slightly longer format on YouTube. I do think it's a compelling way to connect, and so we're exploring that as a business, as people.
Yeah, that's great. And the course is hosted. Is it hosted on one of the Kajabi or Teachable, one of the platforms?
Yeah, that's right. So we ended up going with Kajabi for that.
Okay.
And so we use it for the course, and we also use the communities are hosted on Kajabi as well.
Okay, rather than being like a Facebook group or something like that. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
Right. We didn't really want to go with a Facebook group way. I mean, I think that works for a lot of people, but I mean, I know I'm personally am not on Facebook, and I know a lot of other folks aren't as well.
Though I will say, for anybody out there who's considering Kajabi and wants a community, it's the community feature of Kajabi is not very fully featured, and right at the moment we're feeling a little bit disappointed with how quickly they've moved on fleshing out their communities. Mm-hmm. So I know other people have hosted. I know Lee Metcalf was on here and was talking about. What is that? The
Mighty Networks. Yes.
So there are other good choices out there. We ended up with Kajabi for whatever reason a few years ago, but we might make a different decision today.
Right. Totally. Okay. And so Patrick, you were able to actually be liberated from your full-time job as a software developer and join the business. And talk a little bit about the steps that you both took to make that happen, because I do think it's a dream that a lot of people have to, both work for yourselves and work together. But it is hard. I mean, if you look at this trajectory, this was a lot of years before it came to fruition.
Right. It was a lot of years.
Yeah, it was a lot of years. It was about 2 years ago, I quit my full-time job for sort of a Silicon Valley database company, actually. And so I was trying to do the math on that in my head, but I think it was about at least 12 years from the time we started Sew Liberated to where it really finally became something that sustained our family. And, I think there's a lot of luck. There's a little bit of persistence. It just finally started coming together where we were making enough sales that the revenue coming into the business grew.
I grew as an artist and as a creative, as a visual person as well in those years. I think that I really sort of solidified my style, both my personal style, my writing style. It's just like I sort of grew into adulthood, right? I mean, when I started all this, I was in my early 20s, and as folks should, your 20s are a decade of just immense personal growth and being exposed to all sorts of ways of being creative, ways of life, and we just and I think that I just sort of found a creative home and a creative voice in the wake of my son's medical issues, and I think that was clear in my writing and in my photography and what I was creating for Instagram. So I really credit that
And you had been gestating that Mindful Wardrobe Project course for a couple of years at least.
Yeah.
And we knew we were going to be ready to come out with that, and we knew to really make it happen, to get us over that last mile, that we would need more time to dedicate to it, and that was part of the calculation in me leaving.
And did it help? Yeah, did it help to have that? It's much more intensive what you're doing to work with the people who sign up, but did it help to have, there's like the teaspoon, and then there's like the measuring cup, and then there's like the bucket, there's like different revenue sizes there. And did it help to have that larger bucket piece in place?
Yeah, for sure.
I think so. I mean, it makes sense, right? Like you say, if the only thing that we're offering is our garment patterns, they're $16. We can get a large number of people who are interested in making those, but some people want to go further, and so we do think it made sense to have a course.
And I think just in general in business, we really appreciate our relationship with our wholesale customers, and that was one of our calculations was for us as well, to stop selling the physical patterns, to really support our wholesalers. I don't know what that's going to look like in the future for us. We're actually in a different house now where we could store patterns if we wanted to. I mean, don't know. Patrick's like, no, we aren't going back there. So we have the wholesale aspect of our business. We have the relationship with the distributors. We have the patterns themselves, and the courses here and there that I teach in person, and I just feel like we sort of have this wide base, right? And that's something that we've just developed over the last 14 years.
Yeah. And I will say, Abby, too, to your question about pricing, we're sort of aware of general business advice like that. Like, you might want to have products at different price levels, but I will say we're not very good business people. And so most of our decisions are sort of driven by what we want to do and where we think we can be most helpful to people in the creative making community. So we're not always good at that, but we are coming out with a new course that I anticipate will be somewhere in the middle between buying a garment pattern and the Mindful Wardrobe course. But it is going to be a pretty intensive course to sort of give people the skills to do their own pattern making and do variations on sewing patterns that they might be interested in, but might want to add their own creative flair to.
And can you talk a little bit before we get to your recommendations about kind of working together and what that is like for you as a couple now that you're also in business together? However much people really want to do that, the reality can be different, because it's like you can talk business while you're brushing your teeth, it never ends. The line is very blurred. And How has that been for you? And have you developed some, boundaries or, it can kind of take over?
Well, we love it. And I think that perhaps there's conflicting advice out there when it comes to, should you get married really young or should you wait until, we've been best friends since we were 19, right? So we have we've done a lot of things together. We backpacked around Europe. We lived in Mexico.
And we haven't developed habits separate from each other. We then had to negotiate, right?
Right.
We stamped out all the bad habits early, right?
Right. So we just, I would say that it doesn't feel like it infiltrates our entire lives. I mean, we both have things that we do outside of it. Patrick is really into dancing for the past 2 years, just like little creative projects. But I we have no problem going. We'll go out to lunch. We'll talk about Sew Liberated for, 15, 20 minutes. And we'll talk about our kids or, whatever else is going on in our lives. It's just so much a part of our lives, and it has been for such a long time, that it doesn't feel like an encroachment.
It flows naturally. But I will say that, if I think back, at times when the business was stressful, when we felt like we weren't going to make ends meet, when money was running out, at the end of the month or the end of the quarter or whatever it happened to be, that was more difficult. I think when there's stress and anxiety, and a lot of people who are starting out in business are going to feel this way, or if you're trying to make a market work, but you haven't quite found your audience or found your market, that can be very stressful. And there, I think, I feel for myself in the past, and I feel for people who are going through that. But I think right now we have found a market that's working for us, that we feel comfortable in, and I think we're being pretty good about not being overly ambitious. So we're not trying to grow drastically. We do have a wonderful team of people who work with us, but it's a small team. It's my little brother, Meredith, who's come on with us full time since kind of the beginning of the year, mm-hmm. and Judith in Canada, who works for us about half time. And for right now, that's enough for us. And it's, I think because we feel secure in having the great community to support us that we've had, that certainly helps.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I want to make sure we get to your recommendations. So tell us about something that you would recommend to a creative friend, and I'll call on you first, Meg.
Okay, so this one's easy for me because I just had my hands on this project yesterday. I was coming back from visiting my grandmother in California, so I had a long plane ride. And I was working on a project that my mom actually gifted to me after my first child was born. So that was like 12 and a half years ago. And it was an Alabama Channon swing skirt kit. So it's hand stitching. You have these stencils that are, the stenciling is actually pre-done, and you layer 2 pieces of knit fabric, one on top of the other, and you do these running stitches around the patterns. You end up cutting out the center of each of these leaves, and it gives this very textural, dimensional fabric that you're left with. And you hand stitch the 4 panels together, and it's going to be a little skirt. Now, we found it when we moved recently. It had been hiding in one of those boxes for many, many years, but I'm just really excited to get back to it again. And I hopped on their website to see if they were still doing that sort of thing. And they do. They sell these kits where you get your fabric pre-printed with the stencil design on it. And it's just a really cool, just a very fun project that I found worked really well in the plane, or, it could be on a road trip, or it's very portable. It's like knitting in that way. You don't have to bring your sewing machine with you. So I'm having fun with that.
Yeah, reverse applique with knits. I've seen them, and they're really cool. So that's a great recommendation. And Patrick, what about you? What would you recommend?
Sure. So I'm actually not really a sewer or a knitter, but what I have become as I approach age 40 here is a breakdancer, and that's really become a passion of mine that I started by walking into a dance class at age 37 very awkwardly. But I think I'm a lot less awkward now. And so I guess for me, one thing that I might promote for creativity is just mobility, and we all come to mobility from different places, and we're not all going to be doing breakdancing because we all have these bodies that have traveled with us this long and have different kinds of ability. But there's an account on Instagram and a website that I really like called GMB Fitness, and they just have such a nice approach to this and encouraging us all to be moving no matter where we are in our lives, and just not to say that we're ever too old to learn new skills.
Yeah, that's fantastic. As a person who came to moving my own body a little bit later in life, I totally endorse moving around and not being afraid to start if you haven't been. So
yeah,
exactly right. It's not too late if you missed out on your teens. It's okay.
Patrick can start breakdancing at age 37. And
right,
we can do it.
Now, they added breakdancing to the Olympics, and now I'm just trying to get them to add a master's bracket.
Oh wow, they added breakdancing to the Olympics? I had no idea. That's incredible.
The next Olympics are in 2024, I believe.
Wow. Okay, that's super cool. Well, thank you for telling us about that. And Meg and Patrick, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the Craft Industry Alliance podcast. It was great talking to you both.
Thank you so much for having us, Abby.
Thank you, Abby.
And you've been listening to the Craft Industry Alliance podcast. I'm Abby Glassenberg. Today's episode was brought to you by Paper and Spark. Paper and Spark's user-friendly spreadsheets give you everything you need to do your shop's books without the overwhelm. Get caught up and confident about your numbers with step-by-step video instructions designed with makers in mind. Paper and Spark has been supporting the handmade community since 2014. Thank you so much, Paper and Spark. Craft Industry Alliance is a community for craft professionals. When you become a member of Craft Industry Alliance, you get in-depth coverage of craft industry news, the opportunity to connect with fellow professionals for advice and support, and access to an educational library filled with ideas, tools, and resources to help you as you build your business. Join us at craftindustrｙalliance.org. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.